Hi, I'm Brandon Angel, and if you ever want to learn how to make a true Cajun rice and gravy, then stay tuned. On today's episode, we're going to be learning how to cook a true authentic Cajun rice and gravy. This is a very simple dish to make, and it's a staple in Acadiana households. Today, the meat we're going to be using is a short rib. We use the big thick cut ones, not the small little split Korean style short ribs. So if you don't have these, ask your butcher to help you out and get these big cuts. And you want something that's marbled very nicely, has a good fat content. That way the rice and gravy is really nice and tasty. Other things you're going to need is just some all-purpose flour to lightly dredge your short ribs in. I just lightly seasoned it with some all-purpose Cajun seasoning. Some bacon. I used 5 strips of bacon cut up, and we're gonna fry that down so we can get the grease out of it, so we can brown our meat in. I have one container of Guidry's Creole seasoning. So it's a combination of onions, celery, and bell peppers, which is called the Cajun Trinity. I also have an extra about medium bell pepper already chopped up. I have a pint of wine here, red wine, any brand will do. It's just for flavoring the gravy. And then we have a some beef stock here to use as a gravy as well, and then about 2 cups of water to start. So the first thing you want to do is just lightly coat your short ribs in this flour dredge that we made. So you just want to get just a very light coating on it. And what this is going to do is when you fry it in that, brown it in that bacon grease, it's going to almost create like a little mini roux too, and give it a little crisp. So we're just going to lightly dredge all sides of each short rib so they're all nicely coated. So I have a good amount of seasoning in here, because with a gravy dish, what's going to happen is it's going to get diluted with all the liquids that you put in it, and you're really not going to be able to taste the seasoning if it's not already seasoned well. But you don't want to overdo it, because you can always add additional seasoning to your dish. So we're going to coat all the pieces here, and I've had these out for a little while to get more towards room temperature so they cook a little more evenly. You definitely don't want nothing frozen. You definitely want to remove any kind of silver skin that's left on the meat if it's on there. Short ribs in themselves are actually very tough. It's a very tough piece of meat, and usually a lot of people pass them over. But what we're going to do is we're not going to pass them over. We're going to turn them into delicious rice and gravy. Okay, so now what I'm doing is I have my 5 pieces of bacon. I have it all in the pot that I'm going to be cooking the whole meal in. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fry down the bacon so I can render the fat out of it. Then once it's nice and fried down and cooked down, what I'm going to do is remove the bacon pieces out of it, and then I'm going to add my meat, my short ribs to the pot and begin to brown those. So the key here is you don't want to fry your bacon. You want to just heat it up to where the fat renders out of it. So if your fire is too hot and it's starting to brown and really smoke a lot, then make sure you turn that down to a level where it's not becoming crispy fried bacon. So just keep stirring, keep it moving, don't let it stick. I have a nice cast enamel pot here that I like to cook with, and it's already pre-seasoned to where things don't stick in it. So we're just going to let that go for a little while longer. Make sure we get all the fat out of the bacon. And then we'll be able to put our short ribs in. Okay, so now I have my bacon cooked down nicely and got all the fat rendered out of it. And what I'm going to do now is just take those little bacon pieces out and just set them aside in a bowl because we're going to use those for later too. Make sure you get them all out, because if you leave them in there, the little pieces are going to burn when you come to cook your short ribs, and they'll begin to smoke and they'll give it a burnt taste to the gravy, which you don't want. Okay, so I'm going to turn down my heat just a little while I get all these pieces out and make sure that my my grease doesn't get too hot. Okay, so they've been cooking about 3 or so minutes. We're just going to take one out to check it. So if this is not browned enough, we're going to want to let that go just about a few minutes longer. Okay, so this is more what you're looking for, the kind of brownness that you want. That was about right around 5-6 minutes. So we're just going to flip all the pieces over and let it do the same on the other side. Okay, so this round is done. That took a little less time on this side to cook brown, so we're just going to take those out and set them aside on a clean plate. We're going to add more of the short ribs back to the pot here to keep browning. See if we can get them all in there. Alright, so just about got them all in there. You really don't want to do this if it's your first time cooking it. You don't want to put that much in the pot. It becomes a little difficult to manage. They might burn like this, but we'll keep an eye on it, and we'll just keep checking them, keep rotating them so they don't stick and they don't burn. Okay, so those are pretty well browned on that side. I'm going to just go ahead and flip them over onto the other side and let those brown for about 6 minutes or so. And I have it on a medium-high heat right now. Alright, we'll let that go for about another 6 minutes or so, and then we'll check them to see how they're done. Okay, so it's been about 3 minutes. Let's just go ahead and check side C. Okay, so this is not what I want. That's not brown enough. So we're gonna let it go for a few more minutes to get it to the level of brownness that we want. Okay, so now my meat is browned enough to where I like it. So I'm just going to take out the pieces of short rib and put them on the same plate I put my other ones on. Turn down my fire a bit. I don't want a grease fire to start. So it's really important you leave the bones in on this dish, because that's where the flavor is gonna be at. More. Okay, so now we got all our short ribs out, and now what we're going to do is we're going to take our onions. So right here I have Guidry's Creole seasoning. So what it is, it's the holy trinity. It's onions, bell peppers, and celery, parsley and garlic in there. And then then we're gonna add that to all that stuff that we just cooked. So here's a little secret. All these onions and all these vegetables, it's gonna soak up all that juice. Now these vegetables are slightly frozen. It's probably you probably shouldn't use slightly frozen ones, but you're gonna saute all your vegetables inside the same pan, so it soaks up all that wonderful flavor that we just got from browning our short ribs. Now you're gonna want a little heartier spoon so you can scrape the bottom of all those, we call them grimies, which is just the little stuck pieces of meat to the bottom of the pan that you had when you were browning your short ribs. We're gonna want to also add our bell pepper too. So that's about, oh, why not the whole thing? I'm never afraid of adding too much onion and bell pepper. One, the onions, as they cook down, they're going to make the gravy thicker. And then two, bell peppers I just find add a really good flavor to the dish. They're not hot, so you don't have to worry about it being too spicy. So we're going to let that go. We're going to let that cook somewhat brown and saute down in all those juices that we extracted from the bacon and the short ribs. Okay, so our vegetables are starting to cook down nicely, brown nicely. Since they were frozen, I had a little extra water in there, so it's going to take a little while for all that water to evaporate. Now we're not trying to brown or burn our onions. I've seen that in people's Cajun cooking. And again, if you're looking for a burnt tasting gravy, then go ahead and do that. But we're looking for a tasty gravy. So we're just going to cook them down to where they're nice and translucent. Everything's translucent. The bell peppers are nice and soft. And right towards the end, when they're about done, we're going to add some garlic to it. And we're going to cook that just long enough to where the garlic is fragrant. So just keep stirring. You don't want it to stick. You don't want your vegetables to stick to the bottom of the pot. So make sure you just keep stirring it, working it. You can see that the onions have all soaked up all that nice juice. They're a good brown color right now. And that's what you're kind of looking for. So just let that keep going. Probably another 5 minutes or so on I have it on medium heat right now. Okay, so now we're going to want to add our garlic. I have probably about a tablespoon here of minced garlic. We're going to add that in to our pot. And then we're going to keep stirring. And it'll be done right when you start to smell the fragrance of the garlic. Again, you don't want to overcook it. You don't want to brown your garlic. You want to cook it to where it releases its flavor. Okay, I think everything's just about done here. Our vegetables. So I'll show you what this kind of looks like. What we're looking for. So the onions are nice and translucent. The garlic is fragrant, and the bell peppers are cooked down and have absorbed all the juices that were rendered when we browned our short ribs and fried down our bacon. So now we're going to be ready for the next step, which is going to be adding our short ribs. So we'll turn down this fire just a little bit. Alright, so now we're going to want to, okay, so now we're going to just want to add a little bit of our red wine that we had, just to kind of get all those little pieces down at the bottom. I think they call it deglazing the pot is the term that I was looking for. But so we'll add a little bit of red wine and scrape the bottom of the pot real good to get up any kind of little pieces that may have stuck to the bottom of the pot. So that's really where the really good flavor is. So we're going to scrub that just real good. Make sure we got all the good little pieces and grimi's that were stuck to the bottom released from that. Okay, so the next thing you want to do is add your short ribs back to your pot. So we're going to do that right here. Add all our short ribs, the bone, everything back to the pot. Make sure you have a big enough pot to do this in. Okay, and don't forget about the blood and the fat that dripped out of it on your plate. You want to add all that back in. And then we're going to add our bacon crumbles back in. Maybe not all of them, but just a few of them. Okay, like that. And now we're going to want to cover everything with our beef stock. Okay, we're going to want to add some of our wine here, about half this container. You don't want a too overpowering wine taste. Alright, that's perfect. Okay, then you want to just cover the remaining with the water here. So you want to cover all your meat. Make sure it all fits in the pot. Alright, that looks good right there. We're gonna make sure we work up all those onions, bell peppers that are at the bottom. Make sure you give it a good stir so everything gets incorporated nicely. We're not trying to make a layered cake. We're trying to make a rice and gravy. Okay, so that looks good right there. We'll check it throughout the cooking process, make sure we're not running out of water. So we're going to bring this to a simmer now, and then we're going to let it cook for about 2.5 to 3 hours to let those short ribs get nice and tender and all the juices and flavors meld together. So that's it. So we'll just let it go. Once it comes to a simmer, we'll put the cover on and just go enjoy the rest of our day. Alright, so now everything's coming to a good simmer. I'm just going to give it one last little stir here. And then we're going to go ahead and turn down our heat and cover it and let it go about 2 to 3 hours. So that's it. Okay, so it's been cooking about 30 minutes or so. We're just going to take a little sneak peek and see what it's looking like. Man, it looks perfect. It's got a nice color, nice consistency already. All we got to do now is let time work its magic on it. Okay, so the rice and gravy has been cooking for about 2 hours now. Let's take a look at it and see how it's looking. And it just looks really, really fantastic. So what I'm going to want to do right now is I'm going to want to take some scoops of this, spoonfuls, and add it to a little bit of rice that I already made. And we're going to let that cool down, and then we're going to taste it to make sure that the seasoning and the flavors are right. And if anything's missing, we're going to add to it and let it cook for the last hour. Okay, so I tasted my gravy, and it needed just a little bit of garlic salt and a little bit of black pepper, and I added that both to it, and I stirred it in real good. Now I'm going to let it go probably uncovered for the rest of the hour, so the gravy can kind of reduce and the flavors can intensify, and then that should be good to go. Okay, so it's been about 3.5 hours now, and I'm going to call that done. I'm going to show you a better picture of what it looks like here done. It's reduced down good. The flavor is really tasty. What I'm going to do is going to serve that over rice with a side of green beans and the salad, and that'll be it. Alright, so here's the finished product. You can see that the gravy's nice and brown. The meat is just really spoon tender. That's really what you want to see right there. So I'm going to turn it off the heat now, and it'll be ready to eat. I'll just let it, I'll keep it uncovered, and it'll cook down as much as it cook down until people are ready to eat. Okay guys, I'll wrap it up. Hope you found this episode to be interesting and educational. This is how we cook in Cajun country. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, please hit the subscribe button and follow us on IG. Thanks. Okay, so now you have the real basics of how to make a rice and gravy right there. And you can really repeat this with any type of meat. So a real popular meat that people use to make rice and gravies here in Acadiana is round steak, 7 steak. You can make a rice and gravy out of chicken. You can make a rice and gravy out of pork, pork chops, fresh pork sausage. You name it. The steps are all the same. So it's season the meat, brown down the meat, add your vegetables, then deglaze it, and add your liquids and let it all come to a simmer and let the flavors really meld together. So the vegetables again that I use are onions, bell pepper, garlic, and celery in this particular dish.